Welcome to the red attack path. The second technique is weaponizing Active Directory. Just a quick review from the previous technique. We downloaded and set up EvilWinRM on Kali. We used proxy chains through PWGO web server, which means that we created an account with SSH and was able to connect and set up a proxy chains or a SOX proxy. And then we connected with EvilWinRM to Windows 10 on 192.168x.80, x being your team number. We set up scripts and exe files in the appropriate directories. We executed an AMSI bypass and created the script invoke snow to be able to do that. So a tool that we're going to use in this technique is called Bloodhound. Bloodhound gathers information about Active Directory, looking at the machines on a network that a user account has access to. And granted, it collects that information through the privileges that account has. So if you escalate privileges to an account that has more privileges, you may want to run Bloodhound again to be able to map Active Directory with those credentials in mind. Bloodhound uses graph theory to reveal the hidden and often unintended relationships within an Active Directory environment. There are 3 attacking groups listed in MITRE, if you follow the URL at the bottom, that have used Bloodhound to identify these attack paths. Defenders can also use Bloodhound to identify and eliminate the same attack paths that exist and also to understand the attack paths that do exist in the environments that you work in. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to grab a collector. One of the collectors is called Sharphound. I have provided a link here where you can download sharphound.ps1. That PowerShell script we want to place in the scripts folder for EvilWinRM. If it's necessary, go ahead and restart EvilWinRM. And then we want to execute the collector on Windows 10 to collect the information from Active Directory. So to run that command, we'll connect first with EvilWinRM, then we'll execute the bypass by running invoke snow.ps1. If you don't run invoke snow, the binary that's created from the Sharphound will not be created and will not execute properly because Windows Defender will detect it as a malicious script. To execute Sharphound, if it's in the scripts folder, we're on EvilWinRM and we just do sharphound.ps1. It does take a minute to load, so don't think something's not occurring. If you executed it, just give it some time and it should complete. After it completes, you can type menu and hit enter, and in the menu you should see invoke Bloodhound as a function that can now be executed or module. Executing invoke Bloodhound without any command line switches will appear that it works, but it doesn't save the results file that we want, which is a .zip file, and it doesn't create the .bin file. So to execute it properly, we need to do invoke Bloodhound minus LDAP username, Braley Ogden, LDAP password, winner22, and specify the domain as windomain.local. We could also add the command line switches of collection method all, but what I'm conducting is sufficient for this technique. After executing Sharphound, and it takes a couple of minutes, but it'll create a couple of files. Those files will look similar to this. As you can see, I generated this one on 12/13 _bloodhound.zip, and then it creates a bin file. You may want to clean up that bin file and not leave it around, because once you exit out of EvilWinRM and the user starts using it, Windows Defender is going to pick up that bin file and realize that, hey, something was going on this system. Be careful when you delete the file that you purge it and not just send it to the recycle bin, because Windows Defender will go in the recycle bin and discover the file. But with the .zip file, before you delete it, you need to download it to Kali. So go ahead and use Kali to download the file. And in the EvilWinRM directory structure, with the scripts folder and the exe files folder, I created a downloads folder. Just to kind of keep everything in its own folder and organized. So I downloaded the .zip file to downloads.zip. And right after the info downloading, for a brief moment, you'll see a progress bar. And it pops up. And when it reaches 100%, it disappears and then it says download successful. If you do not see that progress bar for even a brief second, the download probably was not successful. Obviously, you can open up another terminal and look at the downloads folder to see if it exists. I'm not going to take the time to explain how to set up the Neo4j console in Bloodhound. I have provided a URL that you could use to set it up. In my setup, I have MOBA Xterm running with Kali. I'm connected to a Kali VM through that interface. Now, I'm using what's called X-forwarding through SSH. And for me to get Bloodhound to work, it will not come through on X-forwarding. And I haven't troubleshot why or spent time trying to figure it out. So I will actually pull up the VM on my computer, log into it, and then pull up Bloodhound that way. So if you run into that issue with trying to X-forward Bloodhound, just giving you this clue that it may not work. After you install Neo4j and Bloodhound, you want to execute sudo Neo4j console. You're supposed to be able to run Neo4j console, but the first time I loaded Neo4j, and this was not in the last couple of weeks, first time I loaded it was with root, so now I'm with root privileges. So now I have to continue running sudo. If I was to install it again, I would set it up so that I wouldn't have to run sudo. You can connect to and browse to localhost 7474 to verify the Neo4j console is running. And when we come back, we will talk about connecting to Neo4j.